I've studied the way that communities maintain a language and how a language remains healthy. There's certain things that languages have to do to remain healthy. And if they don't do it, they die. And they know this because they've studied thousands of languages. And the languages that are the strongest and maintain the strongest body of fluent speakers have certain things in common. There's no single authority. There's no one person that says, this is how you say it for everyone. There is an intergenerational transfer, meaning that my parents pass it to me and I pass it to my children. Another thing that they found that is critically important is there has to be a diversity of registers. Now what that means is there's a certain set of phrases that we know have to do with jump-ins. There's a certain set of phrases that you would use at the sweat house. There's a certain set of phrases you would use when you're talking to your kids. There's even a mother-in-law dialect where I would talk to my mother-in-law in this funny detached third-person indirect form. But we don't do that anymore. What we tend to do, this person knows 5 words, so those are the way that we say it, and everyone has to say it that way. Well, automatically everyone else is saying, I'm not having nothing to do with that because I know that blue is said this other way. And blue is the one everyone always argues over. Blue and green, how do you say it? You go to this community, it's one way, you go to another community. In about 1997, I heard, and I know that there's at least 3 people in this room that were at the conversation where they finally said, it doesn't matter. If everyone in this room knows there's 2 ways to say it, they're going to learn both ways. They've learned 2 words instead of arguing over 1. The other thing that keeps languages healthy is when everybody has a relationship to the language, and it's called mediated. It's a mediated culture. You use those words, those phrases, those registers, and you use them in such a way that the more Herman and I talk about, the way to talk about, today they were talking about what would we call this tree. I remember, I had a pretty good idea, but then I listened to the conversation, and now it helped reinforce that in my head a little bit. And the other person that was part of that conversation, it means something different to him now. And anyone else that sat in and heard that, it means a little bit more. As we get older, once we hit our teens, it's done. Kids under the age of 7 make like 100 million neurons every single day. That's incredible. You reach a certain point and that drops off dramatically. That's why it's harder to learn languages when you get older. And for adult learners, context and repetition. And if you just hear someone argue about it once and you never talk about it again, that's not enough for me to remember the name of that tree. But if I have a conversation where I feel it's important to me, it becomes a part of who I am. This conversation is a part of who I am, and everybody that's there is a part of this conversation, then it's harder to shut yourself off, to draw that line and move away from it. I've had people ask me, why is it that there's some of you young people that move back and you do really good with the language, and then there's other people that lived around it their whole life and they struggle? I wanted to be a part of every one of those conversations. I wanted to sit with Madeline and Muggs. I wanted to know what they were saying. And not just for me, because I had my friends I sat with in the sweat house, or my family I sat with at gatherings, or my friends, and I wanted to be able to talk about that and have that be a part of who I was. And the more interactions you have like that, that context comes back. And that is culture. That's another way of looking at culture. You can't separate language and culture. It doesn't work. If you try, the community of language speakers falls apart. It's called cultural entropy, and we're going to talk a little bit about that today.